You know what, y'all? I was going to start with singing Usher, but I stopped because y'all are not here for that. Anyway, you are listening to the Good Girl Podcast. I am Cameo King, your host. The Good Girl Podcast is a podcast that's redefining what it means to be good. And we're doing this through women's confessions. Essentially, we're sharing uncomfortable truths. So every week we have a woman on sharing a confession about herself that's meant to heal, free, and help us in our authenticity. Hey. So that's what we're about. So before we get into this week's confession, I have some great, that's my Napoleon Dynamite voice. I have some great news. Did you know that the Good Girl Podcast was nominated as Detroit's favorite podcast? Yes. Woo. Detroit, 313-31 3rd. That's where I'm from. Grew up on the west side of Detroit. West side. Yes, we were nominated as Detroit's favorite podcast. We're nominated by the Detroit Choice Awards for 2021. And now we ain't there yet. Like, we aren't the favorite podcast of Detroit. We were only nominated. And so we have to get into the top 3. In order to do that, I need your help. You know what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask you to vote, right? And you've practiced this in November and October. And you had to mail in stuff. But see, it's not that serious. It's not that serious around this part. All you got to do is click a link. Boom. Click Good Girl Podcast. Boom. Scroll down to the bottom. Boom. And hit submit. It's that simple. So if you want to help, if you believe we should be Detroit's favorite podcast, you can head to the link in our bio on Instagram or on our page, and you'll see where you can vote for us. And so if we make it into the top 3, then we have a better chance of becoming Detroit's favorite podcast. So shout out to whoever nominated us. Was it you? I'm pointing, y'all. Was it you? Who was it? Okay. Okay. And mind you, you can vote. You can vote multiple times. So if you're chilling and you don't know what to do and the Lord drops it on your heart, say, let me go vote for Cameo. Let me go vote for the Good Girl Podcast. Do it. Move on it. Move by the Spirit of God. So go ahead and do that as many times as you want. And here's a quick word from our sponsors. The Ingham County Health Department wants to make sure you are connected and aware of any and all updates on COVID-19. You are encouraged to head to hd.ingham.org for more information on testing sites, vaccine updates, and COVID-19 vaccine distribution. You can also email coronavirus@ingham.org or call 517-887-4517. Again, that email address, coronavirus@ingham.org. or call 517-887-4517. Also, if you're interested in having your company or event shared with our listeners on the podcast that's nominated as Detroit's best podcast or that's nominated as Detroit's favorite podcast, let me know. We have a media kit on our website on thegoodgirlpodcast.com, or you can send me a message and I can answer any of your questions about our audience, about our reach, and so on and so forth. Also, before we hop into this conversation, I'm also a part of a national conversation. Have you heard of the Crown Act? The Crown Act is legislation. It's currently being introduced in Michigan by State Representative Sarah Anthony, and it's been introduced in California and I believe a couple other states. But Representative Anthony's legislation is meant to ban discrimination against natural hairstyles in the workplace. And this includes all levels of public education, public accommodations and services, as well as real estate transactions. So essentially, we have legislation being introduced by another Black woman that allows us to wear our hair as it grows out of our head and not be discriminated against ourselves. Am I saying this right? Not being discriminated against for that, right? And so my part in it, I am one of 4 people who will be speaking at this press conference. And I'll be sharing my experience with hair discrimination, as well as what I know to be true from working with women and girls for over a decade now. So if you head to our our podcast page on Instagram or on Facebook, you'll probably see links to join the conversation that is happening Friday, or links to join the press conference that's happening Friday. So on to this confession for the week. This confession is kind of, it's heavy. It's heavy. I think it's heavy for me. I think it is one of those pivot points in our life where we begin to remove the layers of how we approach life. So here it is. This is my confession. And as always, before I hop into the confession, if you have a confession that you would like to share, or that you want to talk about, or you want us to talk about on the Good Girl podcast, or if it's just an idea, you say, Cameo, we definitely need to talk about this, please head to our page, thegoodgirlpodcast.com, and submit your confession there. There's an entire little link. Just boom, I want to confess. You can share it. You can also get to this link from our link in the bio on Instagram, right? So always open for confessions. You can DM me. No dick pics though. So just putting that out there. So my confession for the week is, there was a point in my life where I believed my salvation was in a man. I'm going to say that one more time, right? There was a point in my life where I believed my salvation was in a man. Now, salvation, that word can be a complex word, a heavy word, a word of great significance. So just so we're on the same page, I want to ensure that we are understanding salvation the same way for the purposes of this conversation. And so for me, I think honestly it is what it is. Salvation means to save me from my present day circumstance. It is my hope for a better tomorrow. It is deliverance from or rescue from harm, ruin, or loss, right? And when I hear salvation from a man, one of the first things that comes to mind is a song. Don't save her. She don't want to be saved. Don't save her. She don't want to be saved. Don't save her. She don't want to be saved. If you don't know that song, don't worry about it. Don't go look it up either. I don't think it is fulfilling to your soul. But anyway, when I think about that song and the culture that made that song possible, acceptable, and celebrated, and the fact that I know it today in 2021 and I am still singing it, this is one of the many reasons I believe my salvation was tied to and came from a man. Now, I'm not blaming an entire worldview, patriarchy, sexism, misogyny, a lifetime of experiences of a Black girl being raised on the west side of Detroit on a Black American rapper, Project Pat. Right? That would be completely foolish. But what I am saying is that the aforementioned things, patriarchy, sexism, misogyny, a lifetime of experiences of a Black girl being raised on the west side of Detroit, and I'll throw in respectability politics, elitism, all that stuff. All these things led to the idea, again, that my salvation was in another human being in the form of a man. As well as the fact that I needed saving, right? And so I want to address both the idea that I needed saving and the idea that my salvation came from a man. But first, let me tell you how I got here. I've always been driven by what I want or what I think I should have. Now, when I make that statement, I am not completely cold-blooded, right? There are things that drive me and move me, like I love Jesus, the Holy Spirit, seeing other people happy, healthy, and whole. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about me, myself, personally, some of my personal desires. And when I don't get those things, those personal desires, those things that I want, I ask questions, I assess, and I start over. And of those things I wanted, there are 5, let's just say 5 that rise to the top outside of all the mushy stuff, right? All the mushy stuff that I mentioned. I just want to throw that in there because I just don't want y'all judging me like Cameo has no soul, right? So here they are. So number 1, joy. I put joy / happiness. So joy. 2, love. 3, protection. 4, reverence. I said reverence / respect. I think they kind of fall in the same category. And 5, and I may etch this out, like it may slowly disappear from the conversation. I wasn't sure about this. But number 5, I have this picture of success. I think that encompasses all of the other 4. That's why I was kind of going back and forth. But anyway, all these things are traits or characteristics that were developed in my formative years and they always have had a man tied to it. So when I think of the epitome of joy and happiness, it's marriage and a family. When I think of love, right, the epitome of love, I think of marriage and a life partner. When I think of protection, I think that a man is supposed to protect me. When I think of reverence, right, and reverence and respect, someone that I look up to, someone that I revere. In my mind is someone who has it all. And when I say all, these are the things that I desire. It's family, career, kids, a spouse. And the picture of success, what I'm talking about, is like a home with 2.5 kids, a wife, and a husband. That was my vision of success. But what I realized is every single one of those items in my mind were tied to a man. Joy, marriage, that's tied to a man. Love, marriage, tied to a man. Protection, marriage, tied to a man. Reverence, that included a family that was tied to a man. My vision of success, all tied to a man, right? And while I do not believe there's anything wrong with including or desiring a man to align with those qualities of joy, love, protection, reverence, yada, 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 I don't believe they can only exist with a man. But that was my problem. I was operating as though they could only exist with a man. And that was my vision, and that was how I was moving, that these things I desired needed a man first, right? I needed a man to achieve these things. And all this despite the love, joy, all these things I was getting and I was receiving from my family, my friends, from my loved ones, and even the protection I had around me, even the protection of God. I still felt that there was something missing, that something was incomplete, or better yet, I was waiting on someone to take me to the next level of achievement, success, and even pride, something I was extremely proud of. And so what did I do in response to that? I waited. I waited, and I waited. And when I say I waited, it's not like I didn't work. It's not like I was pushing towards my goals, but it was as though I had this measuring stick or this barometer in the back of my mind telling me you're not going to get there, wherever there was, which was love, joy, and success, without a man. You're not going to get to this epitome without a man. And it went something like this. This is kind of what the voice sounded like. Oh, Cam, you won an award for your work in the community. That's great and all, but it would mean so much more if you had someone by your side, wouldn't it? Or, yep, you got acknowledged for being the best in your career field, but girl, that's good and all, but where your man at? And those were, like, that was the voice that was playing in the back of my mind. And I know some of you guys probably have heard that voice real time, right? I even think one of those lines were in a movie, right? And the woman's response, was it played by Gabrielle Union? It just reminds me of this. But the woman's response was very much, she wasn't happy. She was discontent. She was sad because she didn't have a man, and it kind of placed this balance that a man would bring her more. It would bring her joy, that her work was not enough. Whatever she was doing wasn't enough. But anyway, it was those moments that told me that I needed a savior to be everything that I could, that whenever I accomplished something, that I needed a man there to save me, to rescue me, to experience this with me, for this to be better, right? That this really wasn't a win. It was a loss because a man wasn't present, that there was better, higher, deeper, happier on the other side of a man's presence. And this is how I came to the conclusion that my salvation was in a man. Now, my confession, listen, y'all, listen. This confession may have struck a nerve. Some of y'all may be feeling a certain type of uneasiness. So don't resist. Do not resist to what I'm saying. And when I say don't resist, it actually reminds me of when me and my brother used to wrestle, right? I'm the younger one, but I'm also the taller one. But it was a point in time when I wasn't the taller one. And he would always put me in a headlock. And I think he understood, like, that was where my weak spot was, because I was taller than him. And so when he would get me in a headlock, and I would just flail my arms and flail my legs, I couldn't do it. And he would, and my brother would be like, Camille, stop resisting. Don't resist. Just don't resist. Just rest easy into the headlock. And I literally had to because I couldn't get out the headlock. So that's what I'm encouraging you guys to do. As you are hearing this, don't resist the information that I'm sharing with you. Just relax into what I'm sharing you, because this is something I think that can really, like I said earlier in the podcast, this is something that can really flip your world. And it can be jarring. It's not an easy pill to swallow. So as you're listening, I do want you to extend yourself some grace. This isn't something that just shifts overnight, because finding your salvation in a man is rooted in every area of our life, both consciously in our values, beliefs, thought process, and literally in our systems, right? How we go about the world. Something as simple as, I think it was like when we think about happy endings in movies and our entertainment and things that we see, it's typically always two people together, right? And we're always rooting for two people to be together. And that is the happy ending. That is a story that is told to us. And it sits in our conscious mind. And I also want to add this, as we are extending grace to ourselves and we are shifting this narrative, even dissolving this narrative, it is also beneficial to men, because it is equally unfair to expect a man to be solely responsible for those things: joy, happiness, protection, respect, reverence. And hear me, the key word is solely, right? So, but that's another podcast. I don't want to go too deep in that. That's another podcast. And this brings me to point number 1 that I stated: why my salvation is not in a man. I want to emphasize and make it clear that a man can and should be all those things mentioned: joy, love, success, protection, etc. However, I believe he is coming into alignment with what already exists, not rescuing or making a new or taking on the full responsibility, right? Now, I believe there is a fine line to distinguish between the two, because if someone is coming into your life and you decide to let them in, they should add value, right? They should add value to the joy, to love, to those experiences, and even elevate those experiences that you have on your own. But au contraire, my friends, there is a difference, right? When we are expecting a man to save us, right? There's a difference in the weight, the expectation, and the responsibility that I put on a man for my joy, happiness, and respect. And so what I am highlighting here is alignment versus you are the only one that can get me there. And even though I am saying this out of my current relationship status as a single person, I really believe this is also going to help some married folk too. Because imagine being in a marriage, right? In a covenant relationship, and your expectation is for your spouse to do all these things that was never in his or her responsibility or ability to do, right? It is not, in my humble opinion, it is not your spouse's job to make you happy. That is an inside job. That is a job between you and God. That is you finding your purpose. That is you finding joy in the things that you find joy in, right? Point number 2, that I need saving. I had to ask myself when I came to this conclusion, when I came to this confession, what do I need saving from? What is it that I am trying to escape that is so treacherous, right? And if it is so treacherous, what man in his right mind will want to align with my treacherous life, right? Because I'm positive he has his own stuff to deal with. And so this is where I believe this saving idea comes from. And what it does is that our life experiences that we have are not understood as full or whole or complete because a man is not present, right? That idea is a cancer. It literally robs us of the fullness of life, starting with those small moments. And then when they snowball, it literally turns into an entire season or years that you have been shortchanging your life experiences because a man isn't present. And some of us don't even realize we're doing it. Here are some examples. Many of us have put off traveling, buying a home, buying lingerie, experiencing life because, well, a man ain't there. And we've waited on this man to rescue us, to save us from this life and move us to another one, right? So I also want to be clear, y'all. Companionship is great. Having a partner to do and share a life with is wonderful. And I'm sure it is fulfilling. As well as a warm body, I'm going to leave it there. Being seen, being loved, and building with someone are still desirable goals. No shade, no shame there at all. I'm not trying to compare the two or dismiss what another healthy person can bring to someone's life. But as I do walk out my life, I will shift my focus to gratefulness, to the blessing of current love, health, relationship, and purpose, and who God is and who God has been to me. And so with that, I want to leave us with a question. Where then is salvation found? Where then is our salvation found, right? And I'm not using salvation for the purpose of this conversation necessarily in the biblical sense, right? If you subscribe to Christianity, I'm not using it as saving from my sins or saving me from the wrath of God. I'm not using it in that sense. I'm pointing back to how I started this conversation about the things I desire in life, about the things that I want. I think we are very much taught, especially as women, that there is some outside force that is going to save us. We even romanticize God, that God is going to save us. But if we actually consider, and if we actually look at the text, I'll take a very popular portion of the text, faith without works is dead. So even in the word of God that some of us subscribe to, it still requires us to partner and us to align with God, that there is still work that needs to be done in order for some things to manifest. And so this is just another encouragement, maybe another layer that's being pulled back on my life, or that has been pulled back on my life, and hopefully encourages you to also pull back some layers on your life if you're waiting on something or someone outside of you to save you, to heal you, to make you whole, to get you to the next level, to have you pursue that career. Like if you're waiting on stability, if you're waiting on, and for the purposes of this podcast, if you're waiting on a man, right, to travel, to buy a home, sis, don't wait, because he ain't gonna save you. He's not. He's not. He's gonna come into alignment with what already exists. So that's what I got for y'all. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you heard my heart. As always, I hope you continue to believe in the good as we are redefining what good is. I am Cameo King, and this is the Good Girl Podcast.